Once you have the power, it's something different. Garrett and I were doing this riff. I was driving yesterday or the day before, and we're talking on the phone, and we were talking about, people go, it couldn't happen in America. That's why people think it is. This I would call it the myth of American exceptionalism, that we're such a special type of people that we would never have a tyrannical, overtaking, and that people would not obey the tyrannical orders and they would do the right thing when push comes to shove. Even though I went and I told people they had to have masks, and even though I locked down churches because I'm a cop and I did the wrong thing, I would never put a baby in the wood chipper. Like, that's the idea that they would have. Like, whenever the line comes up, I would cross. You ever heard of a soft sale? You're familiar with any sales technique? The soft sale is when I get you saying yes.
Oh, we call it the yes train.
It's the same idea, right? Yeah. So any kind of salesperson knows that soft sale, yes train, I get you saying yes. Hey, Ian, if I solved a problem that you had and it cost the amount of money you had, would you be interested in that? Yes. Yeah. It's like, man, I found this really, really great fashion manufacturer, and they're going to sell you like toe socks that actually feel like you're not wearing socks. Would that be interesting to you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, right. So I get you say yes. So look, and how much do you think you could afford something like, $1 a day for a pair of socks?
I think so.
Yeah. So yes. You've been saying yes all over the time, and then suddenly you get to the point where you're saying yes, I'm tossing the baby in the wood chipper, or yes, you're shooting a toddler in the back of the head because they're so slow getting on the boxcar.
The yes train in fundraising, they say get the person to say yes 7 times, and they will give you their money.
It's soft sales.
Yeah,
the technique it's well established. I love that your chat, by the way, said that I'm on meth because they think that I'm talking too quickly. It's the second time that they've done that.
You'd say something like, you think overpollution is a problem, right? Like, pollution's a problem, right? Yeah,
I don't care.
I'm
the worst client. I'm a contrarian.
Nobody says that.
Not.
That just will never happen.
Right, because there's a social pressure on what you're starting with.
Well, because it is it's universally accepted that we shouldn't.
You don't want your kids to live in a place full of pollution, do you?
And so you ask them these questions as you're doing your pitch, and you'd be like, right. Obviously, you want to help, don't you? Yes,
of course.
And that's your 6th yes, and the last yes is, so just hand me your credit card, okay? Okay, here you go.
That sounds like a struggle session where they're like, just one thing you don't like about the U.S.
No, that's
just
not
tell me one
struggle
thing.
session. That's not a struggle session.
What is that called?
So that's just
It's like what they would do with prisoners to get them to turn on their country slowly, one day at a time. One little problem at a time. Tell me about your country.
A struggle session would be you surround someone by people screaming at them and humiliating.
Not what I was thinking.
Humiliating them, cancel culture and things like that.
It's social. We do it online all the time now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a digital struggle session that happens in pretty much any of the echo chambers. If you walk into, and I know you do, and I do it as well, you walk into the space where people are not agreeing with you, and you just, like, I'll get the what do they call them? The fellas, the NAFOs. Whatever they're called, the pro-Ukraine lunatics.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't know.
Oh, I'll just be like, I don't care if Ukraine loses. I actually don't. I actually just don't. I just don't care.
They did lose.
Yeah, they got into a fight with Russia. So Russia lost 20 million people in World War II. The number of people that Russia is willing to throw into an armed conflict it defies Western capabilities to even appreciate.
It's not just that. I think it's fair to say that I'm looking at the battle maps, and I'm like, oh, Russia seized the entire land bridge into Crimea and they're pushing into Odessa. Tell me again how every report they put out about the success of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, it's just not true.
I think that, and they can do it forever. Like, they will just conscript people. They've done it.
Well,
before.
I don't even believe. I don't even believe at this point. Look, we get a year and a half where they keep saying Russia routed, Russia losing troops, Russian defectors, Russian troops begging on camera, and then it's like a year later, Russia has the Donbass and the land bridge to Crimea, and I'm like, wait, so they won?
Right?
They seized.
They lost their way to winning.
Well, they were losing the whole time, and now they're in control of the region.
If we just give Ukraine more money, Tim, then,
I think the control of that eastern Donbass basically provides 20 to 30% enhancement of their GDP. Like, their gross domestic product's going to go off the charts up because they have Black Sea and Mediterranean access for trade, whereas we lose very little for ceding that up. And it'd be like if the entire west coast of the United States, a stripped down the west coast, was owned by Canada all the way down. We had no Pacific coast access. We would have gone to war with Canada to take that access.
Well, we went to war with Mexico and did that.
So in fact, we almost took all of Mexico, but the president, I think it was Polk at the time, was like, I'm just going to arbitrarily give Mexico back.
So I think with the amount that Russia has to gain from Sevastopol and that Black Sea access is just that they'll throw everything, the amount that they'll throw at it relative to everybody else to stop a minor loss. I mean, obviously, I'm not speaking for the Ukrainian people. Losing their territory is horrible, obviously.
Ukrainians getting conscripted and being thrown on the front is bad. But what I said is this: I don't care. We have other problems that I'm more interested in that are closer to my babies. Yeah. So I don't care. And if I say that online, to go to the struggle session piece, if I say online that I don't care what happens in Ukraine, it's like I don't have the bandwidth for that. I always tell people that they're following these laser pointers of outrage. You know, there's a, like, you ever take a cat and do the laser
we were
pointer
talking
game?
about last night. Talking plasma. It's military tech.
You're like, and you attack the laser, right? And so like you'll see the cat attacks carpet, goes after your couch, whatever. You're distracting the cat. That's the American people with the outrage factory. But where's the dot coming from? It's coming from a hand that's way away. It's never going to get struck. So if people are constantly like, oh, Ukraine, I'm furious. Oh, like this is happening. Oh, that's happening. All the anger. I'll just go in and say I don't care. And then you'll get this swarm of wild animals. This is the struggle session that goes on online where they'll mob your feed. They'll come into your timeline. It's a digital struggle session.
But they won't go and fight anymore.
But I'll just, none of them are on the front. Then I'll just turn off Twitter and go outside and hang out with my kids, and I don't care. If you can do that, that's the thing we were kind of getting towards.
You think somebody or some group of people is holding the laser pointer of outrage, or do you think it's just an emergent phenomenon?
So that's the concept of what is a deep state, and let me dig into, and I'll have Garrett's thought on as well. But everybody uses the word deep state, and I hate it. I actually told Vivek that he can't use that word because it's a sexy word. It's like an emotional word. Deep state, the idea of it is like people have these images of like people handing dossiers and like, dark alleys, or they're hanging out at parking garages, like the deep throat idea. And there's like information exchange. The deep state is actually the administrative state, because administrative is like the least sexy thing in the world. Yeah. It's like a guy sitting in like 1980s carpet with like shitty fluorescent lighting at a desk that's been there forever. It's got a coffee stain from his predecessor who put a pot on it. And he just hangs out there and he's doing like administrative stuff. It's a lot of people that have the similar interests, and their interest is, can I make enough money? Can I survive in the government long enough? Am I going to outlast this president, which they will? And can I grow my department enough that I can go and get a big job at like GE, one of the industrial complexes, whether it be military industrial or information industrial or healthcare industrial complexes? Can I build a system that I can walk into and make a bunch of money? And so it's a bunch of people that have the same goals, but they're not coordinating. There's not like a text stream of a bunch of people like at the DOJ, like, how do we F over all the Trump supporters? They just all hate the Trump supporters. And so they all just do things that screw Trump supporters. That's administrative state. And so I don't think there's one hand holding any laser pointer. It's not the X-Files, which would be really cool, by the way. If there was a bunch of people that met in like trench coats and like smoked cigars in a room, there's probably some of those people somewhere doing something, but it's not the things that are running our government, at least not on the, like, they don't have their hand on the lever.
I think it's much easier to combat emergent phenomenon than a cabal, personally. So that gives me hope.
You think emergent phenomenon is easier?
I think it's easier to seed your own emergent phenomenon than to try and displace an entrenched cabal.
I think it's a little bit of both. There's obviously...
It's totally entrenched, though.
During Occupy Wall Street, they introduced critical race theory stuff, which shattered the anti-establishment movement, which was bipartisan. I mean, it was libertarians, conservatives, Democrats, leftists were all like, hey, it's bad what the government is doing. Then they introduced critical race theory, and all of a sudden everyone's fighting over skin color instead of...
Well, then it becomes moral, it becomes religious.
But I do think critical race theory is a phenomenon of social media platforms, because what happens is with the rise of Facebook and the algorithms which promoted content, articles that talk about injustice do well. Rage shares the most. So if you made when all these companies are experimenting with how to maximize traffic, what they ultimately discovered was police brutality makes a ton of money. Mm-hmm. People hate watch police brutality videos and then share it like crazy because of a sense of injustice. But if you add racism, sexism, homophobia, and all these things to the mix of police brutality, now you've got fruit punch. Now it's getting 10 times share. It's getting an exponential return.
That's scary.
So imagine someone born in the year 2000. They're let's say 1998. So they're 10 years old. They're starting to get on social media. Maybe they shouldn't, too young, but they are. And they see nothing but police brutality videos. It's the only thing hitting their feeds. Now it's 2012. Now they're a little bit older. The only thing they see on these platforms is constant streams of police brutality. At one point, there was a website that did nothing but police brutality videos, and it was the 400th biggest website in the world, or somewhere around there, making millions of dollars. This is what the algorithms had produced. You get a generation of people who are raised believing that this is why when you go to they have these Man on the Street videos. A guy went to a Venice Beach skate park. He said, how many black people, innocent black people, do you think are killed by police every year? They're like thousands, few thousand.
Right.
Oh, wow. And it was like 9. Yeah. And it's like, and 9's bad.
It's single digit.
9's bad. But but like 1,000. It's because when you grow up, imagine if when you were growing up, I mean, for those of us that are older, those of us that are younger probably already get this because they experienced in their formative years social media. I grew up with televisions and like UHF, VHF when I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if every single channel, every single day, every news broadcaster, every nightly news report was nothing but police are murdering innocent people.
You know what it was back then?
It'd be a crisis.
It was kids getting kidnapped. You remember, like,
Yep,
being,
that's
in
right.
the 80s, everybody thought they were going to get kidnapped at any moment. Because whole comedy routines about how, like, not if you're going to get kidnapped, but when you're kidnapped, what you're supposed to do. They would go out and fingerprint kids at like parks and stuff.
Footprints and stuff.
We all thought we were going to get kidnapped in the 80s growing up. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
And it was
'Cause
rare.
It was rage fed. It was fear.
But they knew the ratings were good because
That's right.
parents were scared. So then social media begins targeting a bunch of different groups in similar ways, and police brutality becomes the thing.
And there's a feedback loop of that algorithm, because if you consume it, it's going to feed you more of it.
Well, of course. And then people are going to seek out more of it. And then people are going to exaggerate. They're going to lie. Then you're going to get written articles which fabricate stories. You're going to get. Then you're going to end up with where we are today with stories like Ahmed Arbery, a guy who is a felony burglary suspect who fights with some locals over their shotgun and dies in the process. Tragic event, but it turns into a lynch mob killed a man who
they
was
went
just
out
jogging.
hunting him down like a bunch of guys. Even the story, if people look back, there was a story in Gerald, Texas when I was a kid, early 90s. And in Gerald, Texas, there was a guy that was dragged behind a truck. I think his last name is Bird with a Y. That's my memory. If I'm riffing here, but the story was that it was racially motivated. It was this horrific hate crime of this guy that basically had gone out and dragged a dude behind his truck because he was black, which is absolutely a horrible thing to imagine. And then when you get into the nuance of it, like so many times, like there was some kind of a woman that was involved in it. They had some similar lady friends. There was some drug situation. I think both the guys had shared a prison cell at one point in time. There was all these connections between these dudes. It was an utterly personal thing. Like dragging someone behind your truck is a personal thing to kill somebody. It's pretty horrific. And yet it had very little to do with race. It had a lot to do with the personal animosity that this guy went out and he was like sending a message. And obviously he did. And so many people got the wrong reaction from it. And they all know things that are not true. Same thing with Matthew Shepard. People know things, they know them in their heart that are not true. They do not substantiate with the facts of the case.
Well, I think a lot of people too, they buy into the false narrative right from the start. So I was hired by my police department in May of 2014. The Ferguson unrest with the shooting of Michael Brown started in August. And I followed that pretty closely because it was directly related to my new profession, my new line of work. And at the end of the day, Eric Holder and Barack Obama's DOJ ruled that Officer Wilson shot Michael Brown in self-defense. It was a legitimate use of deadly force. How many people out there still believe the myth, hands up, don't shoot? I bet most people do.
I'd say every Democrat.
Yeah.
Every single
Just
one.
like they think 50% of the people who got COVID died from it.
I mean, it's
so
insane numbers.
important
I
to
think the
craft
polling
narrative.
showed that Democrats believe around 20% of people died from COVID.
Dude,
I've seen some that have been higher than that, which is amazing to me.
the tendency for people to believe what they hear the first thing they hear about something is incredibly powerful.
Trusted source.
Even think of our buddy Steve Friend, maybe even me. We've had articles later that were redacted or what's it
Retracted?
called? Retracted, or they like made an editorial change to it because they were wrong. How many people read those? It's like
My favorite is NBC News. They wrote a fake article about me, which then got picked up by a bunch of other outlets like Variety and Deadline, and then quickly removed the lies they had put in it. And so they created a feedback loop of a bunch of outlets all citing each other. NBC basically seeds the story. Deadline, Variety, insert tells the story, and then they back away from it, remove that reference, and now you've got all these articles referencing each other. Deadline reports,
That's a
Variety
disinformation
reports.
campaign.
Yeah, yep. And then when you reach out to the journalist and say, hey, what you report is not true, they're like, I didn't report it, it was reported by Variety. And I'll be like, yes, but Variety is citing Deadline, and Deadline's citing you.
Right.
And they'll be like, well, we're referencing someone else.
It's the meme of Superman pointing at Superman.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, sorry, yeah. So Garret had one of those things that happened about Kash Patel paid them for their testimony. This was a thing that went out there. New York Times covered it, New York, or a whole bunch of lefty sources, CNN, and so on. And like, you want to tell people how you left your job for like a few $1,000s?
Yeah, it's so
your
absurd
career?
because people believe this myth. I was suspended September 26th of last year. I had never spoken to Kash Patel until November of 2022 after I'd been suspended. And so he had heard of my story. Kyle put us in touch and he's like, hey, I have this foundation. You're not, FBI suspended you. They're stripping everything away. I told him like, yeah, we just had a baby. Like we're
couldn't even put coats on his kids.
Yeah, because they held our belongings for 6 weeks too, and he's like, well, I think my foundation could probably help you out if that would be okay with you. I'm
What did he
like,
ask
yeah.
for? What did he want?
Nothing. He didn't want to know anything about what I made protected disclosures about. He didn't want to know anything about my professional work. He just said, I heard the FBI suspended you. And
This is how the media operates. We've talked about this before. It's hilarious. They'll say something like, Jack Nicholson and Britney Spears get married. And then the average person goes, what?
Right.
She married Jack? No. Jack Nicholson got married. And also Britney Spears got married.
That's right.
To different people. But
Technically accurate, visually impactful.
was it factual but not truthful?
Yes.
That's what Michael Mel says.
Oh, that's a good one. That's very good.
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll say something like, let's say you quit your job in 2020 and you worked for the cracker factory. And then in 2022, you get hired by a graham cracker factory and the founder pays you a huge bonus of $200,000 to start. And you're like, it's been 2 years. I had been traveling around the world, wasn't really thinking about crackers. I'm in the cracker field. I get this job. The media will report CEO pays $200,000 to so-and-so who just quits their job to work for them or something like that. They can make it seem like these two things that are totally separate from each other.
It's a cut edit or a jump edit. And it's
So actually, a really great example is the viral video of the guys digging the hole in the beach. And I absolutely despise how everyone falls for this. Did you see this video?
No.
It's some guys are on a beach digging a hole, and it says, here's the hole we dug on Saturday. Then it jumps to a news report where they're like, a hole in the beach may have been a astrological impact. And a guy saying, look at this rock that was found. It's scorched. It was in the hole. And then everyone just shares it like, ha, 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 these guys dug a hole and the media then lied about it. No, dude, you got played. Someone saw a news report of a hole in the beach, then went and dug a hole and put their clip in front of it to trick you into thinking the media got it wrong. It's all the manipulation game. Everyone just bought it. And I'm just like, people want to believe what they want to believe, man. It's that simple.
Mike Rowe was so eloquent about talking about what the Let's Go Brandon phenomenon was. And people were always like, oh, it's just being mean to Joe Biden. It's a way to hide profanity. And what it really was something where people recognized that they were being played.
Yeah.
Something was happening on live TV. Some woman said something that was absurdly different. It had nothing to do with what was happening around them. Listen to them. They're all chanting, let's go, Brandon. When they were chanting something that was not that. They were not saying.
It was F Joe Biden.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where the crowd is yelling, F Joe Biden. And she's like, they're saying, let's go, Brandon. And so she says that. And everybody puts that on the shirt, not because they're saying F Joe Biden, although some people obviously did. What they did say was, the media is lying to us. They actually lie to our faces when the proof is in front of us.
Yep.
And so that was why it was so important. And then, of course, it was more important because Joe Biden agreed with it. So whenever I wrote that on my whiteboard at work, I just quoted the president on December 24th of 2021. He said, I agree, let's go, Brandon. So I also agree, let's go, Brandon. But there's something sad about when it happens in real time and people eyeball it, and then the media, then they play it again. Everyone's being mean to Joe Biden. It's like, no, you clowns came out and outed yourself, and everybody saw it on national live TV. And why did she feel like she had to lie about it? It's so bizarre, but they're compelled to.
It's what they do all the time.
It's what they do.
I mean, it really does make you wonder when they seemingly lie for just absolute BS reasons, but they do. I'm telling you, man, people need to understand that, so we got a request recently for me. It happens periodically. Like the New York Times wanted to talk to me about something and I'm like, yeah, good. Yeah, right.
Hard pass.
It's not going to happen. There some things I have no problem if I get. So I got directly contacted by someone at Washington Post about something and I gave them a quote. I'm like, whatever, I don't care. But on some issues, on most issues, I won't engage with these people because they will lie 100% of the time.
They will say
100%.
They'll be like, this thing, ... ellipses, leaving out all the context, and then they'll just say something
better than
totally
that.
the opposite.
They use their opinions to formulate what you really said. So they'll ask you something like, Kyle, what are your thoughts on January 6th? And you'll say something like, what an awful day. An awful day. I mean, none of that should have happened. I'm shocked.
Ryan Riley did this to me.
Yeah.
He
and
literally quoted
then
me
what they'll do is they
doing
won't quote you. They'll say, when asked for a comment, they began to lament that Donald Trump lost the election and said that what had happened to Trump was awful, seemingly in support of the rioters. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
I was criticizing the riot.
Right,
no,
right.
they can just interpret it how they see fit.
Yeah.
And then you can't sue them because they'll be like, well, that's how I understood it.
Yeah. Yeah. This has happened to me, Kyle, and Steve. I was deposed in February by Republican and Democrat attorneys, and then I testified publicly in May. In the interim, the Democrat side leaked little pieces of my testimony and editorialized themselves to the New York Times and some other places, and they love to say, oh, they just believe conspiracy theories about January 6th.
Yep.
When I talked about January 6th, I talked about a lead that I received where then the FBI told me that they had facial recognition match for the guy they wanted me to investigate. They used a driver's license photo that was 25 years old to get the facial recognition match. So I don't care the type of case. If it's an Antifa case, a January 6th case, a bank robbery, I don't care. If you send me a photo from 25 years ago and say you got a facial recognition match, that's a problem, a really big problem. It forbids due process. And so, I mean, I worked that case or that lead like harder than I've worked many other leads because I was like, I could smell the roses. I'm like, something's not right about this. And this was early. This was, January 15th or something, January 20th of 2021. And and then they say, oh, he just has conspiracy theories.
They do the thing where they're like, Kevin McCarthy opens impeachment inquiry despite no evidence of Joe Biden committing a crime.
There's no evidence, yeah.
But here's the issue. Aside from the fact that there is evidence of a crime, an inquiry is the seeking of the evidence.
Right.
An inquiry is, hey, we've got probable cause.
Yeah.
Let's investigate to see if there's evidence
You don't
of a
need
crime.
probable cause actually to open investigations. That's not the FBI standard for sure. We don't need probable cause means we're serving a search warrant. We're going to go get it. What the requirement is a credible allegation or information that a crime has been committed. So is there an allegation or information that crime may have been going on underneath Biden's political influence? The obvious answer is yes. There are allegations and there's some information. Then you go find it.
The purpose is to taint, to poison the well.
Right.
So that someone, what you'll get is the average person saying, they're trying to impeach Joe Biden with no evidence of a crime. The appropriate response is, they're investigating to see if there was a crime. What do you mean? Like, they're not impeaching him right now. They're saying
it's a probe.
It's a probe. There's been a bunch of accusations of criminal activity.
Ian knows what I would call it.
Do you think that if, and this is a good way to put it for everybody, if one of your family members or friends is like, why are they doing this? Say, I mean, if someone's accused of a crime, should the law enforcement do some kind of investigation into that crime? So let's say like a woman gets raped and then she goes to the police and says, I was raped. They say, do you have evidence? She goes, no. Well, then they should say, okay, well, we're going to try and see if there's evidence to support this claim this woman's made.
Or you could do what they did to Donald Trump. There was an allegation and then they impeached him.
Right.
You could do that. And I'm not the biggest Trump fan in the world. He's not like a role model to my children. I think he makes some bad decisions. I think he's his own worst enemy in many ways. But looking at what happened to him, just objectively, you can look and say, is this being treated in the same way? And the answer is, of course, no. One of the proudest moments for me is the fact that I got suspended from the FBI before they went into Mar-a-Lago. I know people that were at Mar-a-Lago. Like I know, like my old office was in Washington D.C. in Judicial Square. And
were you friends with these people?
Yeah, I mean we had lunch occasionally. Like they're people that were on my academy class roster that I would sit and I know pretty well that were there.